Welcome to Everything House Music and More, and my special guest today is the one and only Vince Lawrence, who I can say is very legendary in this business. Vince, what's going on, brother?
Oh man, I'm glad to be here.
Hey man,
I'm
I
glad
appreciate
you're
you.
here.
No, I appreciate
Welcome
this.
to my humble abode.
Yes, sir. So you ready to get into this?
I'm ready to get into
All
it.
right. So before we start this interview, Vince, I would like to play respect to your father who just passed away, man. All due respect. And I want you to tell the people who he was and what was his contributions to black music.
Okay, so wow, it's pretty big, and it's still pretty new for us. My dad, passed away just recently. But to try to summarize, Nehemiah Mitchell, also known as Mitch Ball, I should say Nehemiah Mitchell Jr., also known as Mitch Ball,
Okay.
was my dad. And he was a Vietnam vet, a proud Chicagoan, went to Harlan High School.
Yes.
And when he came back from during his stay in the military, he was throwing parties in the mess hall. And when he came back, he linked up with Eddie Thomas, who is most famously the Tom and Tom Records.
Nice. Okay.
And he was the founder of the Dogs of War record pool, likely the first black record pool in America.
Yes, sir.
And Eddie and my dad were friends, and my dad spent time with Jerry Butler and, various members of the Impressions, the Five Stair Steps, etc. And, basically, fancied himself a bit of a songwriter.
Yeah.
Hanging out with the doo-wop singers in the 60s.
Right.
Most interestingly, I tried to spend as much time with my dad as possible.
Yes, sir.
And that would put me at the Dogs of War record pool meetings.
Yes.
In the great days of disco. And post Tom, Eddie was managing R&B groups and funk groups, and one of those groups that Eddie was managing was Captain Sky.
Yeah.
Who had the jam Wonder Worm here in Chicago, and then Super Sperm and Dr. Rock and all of these. And that was my introduction to the music business.
Right. As a shorty, you went on tour with them.
Yeah. And at 14 years old, Eddie Thomas said, "Hey, we're going to send you on the road with Captain Sky for 2 weeks."
Right.
That was my summer camp.
Yeah.
And most interestingly enough, Captain Sky said to me, he says, "Hey, if you're going to be on my bus, you got to do a job. What you going to do?" And I said, "Hey, I know how to do pyrotechnics."
Right.
And he just said, "Okay, well, you're the pyrotechnician." And
well, was that true, though?
Yeah, well, sort of.
I mean, come on, at 14, how you going to try to do pyrotechnics?
Well, I had learned quite a bit about solid, how do we say this? Flammable solids.
So you was an arsonist.
I had learned a bit about flammable solids from my time flying model rockets.
Okay.
I learned all about combustion. We were making our own fuel packs and stuff like that. And
wow.
I was a bit of a nerd.
Yeah. No, I get it. I understand.
So we were.
I understand.
So I used the same tools that we used to create the rockets.
Yeah.
So they flew up, and then at the end they popped off the little thing that popped the parachute off.
Exactly.
I used just a combination of the same chemicals.
Wow.
To make these little miniature explosions. And
so you actually did pyrotechnics for the group?
Like
Wow.
I had little mushroom clouds going off.
That's a lot of trust, brother.
I had little mushroom clouds going off on the stage and everything.
Let me ask you, was there a lot of drugs doing that back then for the group?
Well, back then, that was the 70s. You know, everybody was smoking weed.
I'm being funny, Vince, because I'm saying for letting a 14-year-old do pyrotechniques.
Well, letting a 14-year-old on a bus.
So I just wanted to do that, man. I just wanted to pay respect, man, and let people know, who your father
now,
was.
separate from introducing me to the music business.
Yes.
My father had a record label, and it was called Mitch Ball Records.
Right.
And he had put out quite a few soul and like 70s style soul and R&B records and some doo-wop songs.
Right.
And Jimmy Spinks, who was the fat guy in Car Wash, he put out his only single, so on and so forth. And my dad, for my 16th birthday present, most kids get a car. I got studio time.
Yeah. Ain't that something?
And he gave me the studio time so that I could make a record.
Right.
And in that process, I taught my dad something that I learned at the Dogs of War. I said, "Hey, Dad, you got to stop making these 45s. Dad, you got to stop making these 45s,
right,
and start making 12-inch discs."
Yeah, disc. Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, man, why do I want to make a 12-inch?" I'm like, "Yo, first off, that's all the DJs are going to play.
Yeah.
Is a 12-inch. They're not going to mess with that little thing in the center of the 45
right.
and all of that. And then on top of it, Dad, you sell a 45 for about $1.20.
Right.
And you sell a 12-inch for $2.30.
Yeah.
And Dad, it only costs 25 cents more,
right,
to make a 12-inch.
Right.
And you double the amount of money you sell it for.
Yeah.
So my dad says, "Okay, we're going to try this. We're going to make your record a 12-inch. And me and my friends, I just got my first synthesizer not too long before.
Wait, hold on. Let's slow down a little bit. We're going ahead of the court right now. Head of the card, I should say. Hold on a second. I want to give people to know. We're going to get into all that, Vince.
Okay.
But for the three people that left in the world that may not know who you are, what is your relation to house music?
Let's see. To give you a laundry list, I co-authored what they say is the first house music recording with Jesse Saunders.
And that is On and On.
Yes.
Okay.
And I named Jesse Records, designed its logo, built a distribution network for that.
Okay.
And basically helped get Jesse Records off the ground.
Right.
I named Trax Records, designed its logo, and basically helped that business get off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I helped Ray Barney start Dance Mania.
Oh, really?
I was the first. Yes, sir. If you look at the original Dance Mania logo, it's the same handwriting that it is on the Jesse label.
Wow. Now, do you remember what was the first record release?
Hardcore Jazz.
Hardcore Jazz.
By Dwayne and Company.
Wow. See, look at that.
And that was after Ray reinvigorated his father's label, Bright Star Records.
Bright Star, yeah.
And I did the first Bright Star record in maybe 20 years or something like that with a I shouldn't say young, but with a singer that I had discovered singing at a church. He had been the Cowardly Lion on the local Schubert Theater production of The Wiz.
Okay.
A man by the name of Daryl Pandy.
Oh, get out of here.
So, yeah, I did the first Daryl Pandy record.
And what was that?
It was called Climax.
Really?
And, yeah, that song was produced by myself and Dwayne Grant.
Okay.
And later on, Dez and Grant.
Dez and Grant, right.
Dez and Grant went and made some records together.
Wow.
So let's see. So what I said, first house music record.
Yeah.
First house music label, basically.
Yep, that's right.
Second house music label. The most famous one. Okay. Actually, I was involved in that. I brought Marshall Jefferson into the music business.
Right. Now, there's this rumor that you and him you did his first record.
Yes, I produced his first record.
And what was that?
Virgo Tracks, the Go Wild rhythm tracks.
Wow.
The Virgo Go Wild rhythm tracks.
Okay.
Was a record by Virgo, which is Marshall's pseudonym.
Okay.
and it was produced by me.
Wow. So you supplied all the gear at the time too?
At the gear, yes.
Wow.
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, I got that 808 over there. We can get a shot over it. The 808 that made On and On, Time to Jack.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
The Marshall Jefferson record. I still have that 808.
Wow. Now, you did all the programming for it also?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I try to collaborate with the people that I work with. So just because I did the programming doesn't mean that I necessarily created it all 100%.
Right.
I think that it's a collaborative effort. Like, hey, what do you want to do here? You want to make the claps do this? You want to do that?
Yeah.
I just try to, as a producer, want to help the artists get their vision out.
Right. Wow. So at that time, the 808 was pretty expensive.
Yes.
So tell me a little story of how that came about, how you had one.
Well, Jesse and I had started drummerless rehearsals.
Okay.
Because we got a Mattel Sensonics drum machine.
Yeah.
And our drummer was always late. And it turned out that the Mattel Sensonics drum machine sounded better out of the PA.
Okay.
Than us miking these drums anyway.
Oh, wow.
And we noticed that using the little drum machine, the little toy, that it sounded more like the records that we were playing at the playground.
Yeah.
And Jesse, with his next paychecks, went out and got the Dramatics.
Right.
Which was a little TR-606.
606, yeah.
And we started using that to make these little tapes and stuff like that in the garage. And Jesse started playing those at the playground, and that was great. So we just knew that the 808 was the sound of Nucleus, was the sound of Planet Rock, was that sound.
Yeah.
And
now, how old were you at the time?
Oh, maybe 18.
18, okay.
18 or something like that.
And what year was this?
Oh, I want to say it was 81, 82.
81, 82, okay. All right.
And we were making some beats on the Dramatics and stuff like that. But we knew the TR-808 was really it.
Right.
And it was a lot of money. We really couldn't afford it.
Okay.
But I had a friend from high school. He was just like a really amazing friend, Randy Lucas.
Okay.
And Randy said, man, we see y'all trying to do it, man. You really need the TR-808.
Right.
You know, I'm like, yeah, we only have half of what we need to get it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna loan y'all the other half.
Really?
Yeah. And he just gave us the money.
So at the time, you remember the cost at the time?
Oh, it must have been like $1,014.99 or something like that.
Then, yeah.
And he just loaned us the other half of the money. And I don't think he ever even collected it back. He just wanted to be part, you know, he's like, he saw us doing it. He's like, he just wanted to see his friends
succeed.
Yeah. So he just, Randy was, we were in high school and he had a job as a security guard because he was like 6'3", 280,
right.
Big dude. And he just like,
right.
He had enough money to do whatever he wanted to do, and he just shared with us, and that was really awesome.
Nice.
And that put us in business. That put us, square on with the Ready for the Worlds and stuff like that in the world.
Wow. So that's how you developed the first drum machine. Then you
got the 808.
Got that way, yeah.
And, shortly after we got the 606, Jesse got the 303 to go with it. Okay. But we were actually trying to use it to make bass sounds that sounded like bass. We weren't doing like the acid thing that came later.
So you had the TB3 earlier.
Yeah.
But never used it to tweak it like
that
DJ Pierre did with the Future and everything.
We might have did some things that are similar. Like we did a record called I'm the DJ.
Right.
That had the beginning of that sort of sound, but really.
Right. So let me ask you, did you ever attend the Warehouse?
I went to the Warehouse. I think I went to the Warehouse twice.
Okay.
Because I wasn't really old enough to get in.
Right.
I got a fake ID from Treasure Island on State Street, on State and Lake. Remember
Right.
Treasure Island?
Right.
On State and Lake, I got a fake ID from Treasure Island in between a couple games of Space Invaders.
Wow. Get out of here.
Remember it was Treasure Island was an arcade.
It was, yeah. So what made you want to go to the warehouse?
Well, after the playground, it was a place that stayed open until you could go and dance until the sun came up.
So the playground was before the warehouse?
Pardon?
The playground was before the
warehouse was open.
Right.
The playground came after it. First Impressions,
Okay.
the Loft, all those, the Mansion, all the other parties that our peer group were throwing.
Okay.
You know, the epitome of those parties was like this place, the warehouse, because it stayed open until 7, 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning sometimes.
Right.
So like if you know, most of the little rental parties, I shouldn't say the little, but most of the rental parties that we were doing, like at the South Shore Country Club or South Commons or Sours and stuff like that, they had a strict limit on how long you had the space.
Okay.
And you know, it was ending at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock if you were lucky.
Right.
And the warehouse stayed open till 7, 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
So people would leave our parties and go to the warehouse because it was the only place still open that was playing great dance music that you could dance to.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it had this mystique, and it was, you know, it only held a couple hundred people, if that.
Right.
So there was always a line down the block.
Okay.
And you know, they got to the point where they were like, you know, restricting entry.
Okay.
Because they were trying to make space for their members, as they say, so on and so forth.
Now, were you kind of skeptical about going in because you know it was a gay club?
No, honestly, we had some success early days with my record Fast Cars.
Okay.
And we were hanging out with record company executives from Arista and stuff like that when we were promoting our records at the Taste and the Nimbus or whatever.
Right.
And I had met Jermaine Stewart.
Okay.
And Jermaine Stewart and I became friends. And he was like my first gay friend.
Okay.
And I wasn't really one of those guys that was really homophobic because I knew if you had a gay friend, it didn't mean necessarily that you were sleeping with them you know, I'm straight, you're gay. Right. Okay, cool. That's just, that's the same difference as I'm black and you half Japanese.
Right. Right.
It's just, hey, we're different.
Absolutely.
we're different.
We're not different though, but.
Huh? Yeah, we're different, buddy. And that was that. So no, I wasn't really, afraid of that. And I had a cousin, his name's Daryl now, but my cousin, and this is in the 70s, was a she.
Okay.
But she was all, you know, everybody thought she was a tomboy.
Right, right.
You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, Donna was cool.
Right.
Before she became Darren.
Right.
And I was cool with that. She was actually one of the coolest motherfuckers I knew.
Right, right. So you was already accustomed to it.
You know? Yeah. And that was that. So like, you know, the question was, after you took the bus over to the warehouse and you stood in line with my fake ID, whether or not I was actually gonna get in.
Okay. Because
their members got in first.
Right.
And then they checking to see whether or not you got the right fashion on and all of that.
So you would go here by yourself?
No, or with with a friend or something like that.
Okay.
That's just what it was. So I went to the warehouse once or twice.
Okay.
And it was a great experience. The sound system was amazing.
Yeah.
And, you know, they, you know, they had minimal, you know, production props per se.
Right.
But they always made the party really something special for the people
at that time.
For the people who came out.
So let me ask you this. When did you first remember hearing the term house or house music?
I remember that very clearly.
Okay. Elaborate, please.
Jesse Saunders, Farley, and I were standing in the DJ booth at the playground.
Okay.
And Reggie Corner
Okay.
and Hans Cherry
All right.
came running in the party
Okay.
from another party.
Right.
And they were like, yo, after this sucker closed, we going to the house.
Okay.
And I'm like, what? We going to the warehouse. We going to the house. We going to hear Frankie, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
We going to the house. Farley, you should play some of that house shit as this party's ending.
Right.
And we going to go to the house after this.
So at this time, it wasn't house music that was our house music that was playing. So you guys at the playground was playing disco and everything. And
Disco.
Italian house.
We were playing actually Italo.
Right.
We were playing disco records.
Okay.
We were playing all kinds of experimental records like Fad Gadget.
Okay.
We were playing, there was Rock Lobster from the
Right.
B-52s
Absolutely.
and Mesopotamia.
Right.
It was a very interesting mix. It was
Yeah.
not all black,
Correct.
soulful disco.
And at this time, it wasn't house music yet.
No.
Okay. All right.
No.
Just want to make sure of that. Okay.
And it was an interesting mix of things that we were playing. And ultimately, it was an interesting mix of things we were trying to emulate when we started making records of our own.
Right. So at the playground, the main DJs were Jesse and Farley, correct?
Jesse Saunders and Farley. Yes.
Okay. And then the owner of the playground was who?
Craig Thompson.
Okay.
So Craig and Butch Thompson, brothers.
Right. Yeah.
And they were a real inspiration for me as an entrepreneur.
Okay. That's good.
Because that was the first, and now that I think about it, that was really the first, those are the first black business owners that I knew.
Right.
And I aspired to have my own business and do my own thing.
Wow.
Because I saw that they,
Yeah. So were you creating or producing music before you went to the playground?
Yes.
Okay. So you were.
Yeah, I
music.
arrived at the playground with a 12-inch under my arm.
So what was
I was throwing parties at First Impressions across the street.
Okay.
And they were running me out of business, boy. I mean, they had such an amazing party, though. You know? I had thrown a party at Sours.
Right.
With a group of friends. We called ourselves Infinity Space Eclipse.
That's a long
because it was a group of 3 different dance groups. It was Infinity, the Rare Sounds of Space, which was Rory McAllister and Dave Risquet.
Oh, get out of here. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And Eclipse Productions, which was Michael Benson and a couple of other guys.
Yeah.
So we all got together to form Infinity Space Eclipse.
Wow. Just a small click, man. Look at that click.
And we threw this event, and we had this plan to keep thugs out the party.
Right.
Because all of our peer group, we were all preppy kids. So we were wearing Izod, Lacoste, polo shirts, and K-Swiss and stuff like that. So we said, look,
I remember that.
Everybody's wearing Izod, so let's make it a requirement.
That's how I got into play like that.
And we said, okay, look, we're going to charge $5 to get in the party if you got something with Izod on, and $10 if you don't.
Wow.
And we put on the part on the flyer, bring your Zod and work your bod.
Wow. And what was
we called the party Izod Fest.
Izod Fest. Yeah.
And Craig and Jesse and them, they came down to our party, which was off the friggin' chain. They saw what we were doing. They said, okay, look, we're going to go book Sours every weekend for the next 6-7 months.
Right.
And, when we came back to book another party, it was like, no, we can't get a Friday or a Saturday for 6 or 7 months because Jesse and Craig.
Wow.
And then they threw Izod Fest 2, Izod Polo Fest.
He just took your idea.
Izod Polo Pizza Party.
So stop right there. So Vince, who is Jesse Saunders and why does he matter?
Well, first off, Jesse Saunders is a great friend of mine.
Okay.
And after Craig and Jesse basically hijacked my marketing concept, they went and opened the playground together.
Okay.
And I actually went to work for them because I'm like, hey, they're having a great party.
Right.
Maybe, and this is how much money I'm making throwing parties. Maybe I could just fold in with them,
Right.
make the same amount of money, and have more fun.
Yeah.
So I went to work over at the playground. I was doing marketing, coming up with stuff like that. And then I started doing lights next to Jesse.
Wow.
And we became, friends. And I said, hey, Jess, I've got a synthesizer and I can make, sound effects and stuff like that. We can do cool stuff. I'll bring my synthesizer. And
you just looking for a friend.
Yeah, that's really it. Jesse was one of the cool kids in class and all of that. And so we checked out. I said, yeah, man, I put out a record. He says, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, I did a record. And I've been getting it played around town. It was in the record pools. It was in rotation in GCI for a little while.
And that was Fast Cars, right?
And it was a song called Fast Cars.
Right.
Fast Cars is widely viewed as a new wave record of sorts.
Yeah, I was going to say, why wasn't that, I guess, considered the first house record then?
Well, that's because nobody wants to consider it that. But, I mean, honestly, it's a 4/4 record that was made with synthesizers.
Right.
The problem with my 4/4 was we rehearsed that record at 120 beats per minute.
Right.
But my drummer was so excited about being in a real studio for the first time that he probably played a sucker to 140.
Right.
And then after that, my dad says, well, what should we do? I was like, we need to get one of these hot DJs to do a disco mix.
Okay.
And I actually wanted Peter Lewicki.
Okay.
Because he was the hot guy that Captain Sky used on his records. But we couldn't get him. So my dad helped me get Kenny Jason.
Oh, really?
Who was at the time on Disco DAI.
Right.
So so Z Factor Fast Cars, the Kenny Jason mix was the mix that we went with. And then from there we got, a little bit of play on DAI.
Right.
But my dad and Eddie Thomas managed to get the record on GCI.
Okay.
And that was kind of in response to the energy that Herb Kent was getting on his Stay Up and Punk Out night.
And you still about 18 years old at this time?
No, when we made Fast Cars, I was like 17.
Wow.
So that was in like 1983.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
83. I had been out of high school, maybe a year or something like that. But when he put we put the record out.
So I know that's coming up. A lot of DJs never played. A lot of them play Fast Cars, like you said, because of the tempo.
Well, that's people say that, but that's funny. There's a whole clique of kids.
Yeah.
That were going to all of our parties at Sowers and the Playground and the Racquetball Club and Mendo and so on and so forth. And they dressed in punk rock attire.
Right.
They wore the spiked belts and the chains and the new wave glasses, and they had mohawks and stuff like that. And I don't know, there was the Spy Guys.
Right.
And a few other cliques, they requested that record.
Oh, wow.
At the Playground. And Jesse and Farley both played that shit.
They
did all their new wave dances that they were doing.
Wow.
To that.
Okay.
And I don't know why it is that our black comrades reject the fact that there were other black kids dancing to stuff other than just soulful disco.
Yeah.
Because at those parties in our foundation was Fad Gadget, was Kraftwerk, was all this Italo stuff like Doctor's Cat Feel the Drive, was Situations by Yazoo, was, there's all these records.
Yeah.
That ultimately told me, Ministry, Primental, and stuff like that. Those records told me that I didn't need a band anymore. I didn't need a guitar player, that I could make records that were all synthesizer. Those records were to me the future.
Yeah, and they had four on the floor.
Some of
Yeah,
them
some
did,
did,
some of them did, some of them didn't.
Absolutely.
But they were great records to dance to.
Right.
And those records got played at the playground, got played at Mendo, got played at all this, and were played on the Herb Kent Punk Out show, and were sold at imports, etc.
Right.
Kano, I'm Ready was part of our culture.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely.
You know, and Kano, I'm Ready is not a soulful record.
It's not.
Like, you know, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes
Right.
and all of that. And it seems that we went this way where we say that.
I think that's further down the line, because I think what you're saying, Vince, a lot of DJs did play that, and they still play that in the late '80s, early '90s, because I think it was a switch where you was like, all right, we're not playing that because now we got our own style and our own type of music.
But honestly, we have our own style.
Yeah,
Chicago-based house music is synth driven.
It is.
It was synth driven.
Before you get in there, I want to ask you another question, because
we couldn't afford no bass players.
That is true. That is true.
Couldn't afford bass players that could play.
Yeah, at the time. So I was speaking to Farley, Jackmaster Funk at the time, and I credit him of making this record popular of yours, which was Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out. I want to know your thoughts. That record came out before Jesse Saunders On and On.
It did not.
It did not.
No.
It didn't.
No, it was made before Jesse Saunders.
Oh, okay. I would just want to make sure.
And we were waiting for my dad to put the record out.
Okay.
And my dad might have taken a month and a half went by, and he hadn't put that record out.
Wow.
And we had made a whole album.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be the kickoff. And Jesse got a 4-track cassette deck.
Right.
And he really wanted to start playing, you know, stuff that we made separate from the cassettes and stuff.
Yeah.
And he wanted to scratch, you know, words that we had written into the songs and stuff like that. So we had the Dramatics,
right.
the 808 and the TB303, and we had just got a Korg Poly 61.
Right.
And Dwayne was playing on that.
Okay.
And that's kind of we got together at Dwayne's mom's house because she was out of town for the weekend.
Right.
We had a whole weekend of making stuff.
Yeah.
Hanging out with a bunch of people after the playground closed. And we said, let's go put this out. Let's go press this up. And
so it's crazy that you said, because if you would have put Fantasy out first,
mm-hmm.
you would have been the first one to have the first house record, then, correct?
I co-wrote On and On.
I know. I'm gonna go there, but I'm just saying that. Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're gonna say that, then there was 2 opportunities for me to have the first house record.
Fast Cars,
and Fantasy.
Right. So let's go to On and On. It's created, but we often don't hear the recording process for that, since you co-produced that.
Mm-hmm.
Give us your detailed account and from idea to pressing that record.
So Jesse had just gotten the 4-track cassette player. This was the first 4-track cassette deck in Chicago. And effectively, it turned us into our own little studio.
Okay.
So it was a Yamaha MT44. And then it had a little mixer that came with it. Then a little patch bay that was sold as a separate thing. We got the whole setup. So not only could we record 4 tracks at a time, we could take 3 tracks and collapse it down to one track and then continue stacking, stacking on top of that. And we just started making songs.
Wow.
We went from making just like little beat ideas and stuff like that to just full on songs that had a lot of musical parts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's where it started.
So Jesse came up with the concept, like let's put these records together, and then when you help him with the record with On and On, what was the process of going through that whole record?
Well, I mean, Jesse had the idea for the bass line and stuff like that. And
Right.
we had the 808, and we were just kind of mimicking the beats that we were hearing on other records that we liked, sonically,
Right.
So we like John Roca as an example. We wanted John Roca, but we wanted Roca had kind of a hip hop bebop sort of beat.
Right.
But we wanted a John Roca that went like this, because we knew that the 4/4 thing, the kick drum coming out of those big speakers at the playground made those kids go crazy. So we wanted the sound of the John Roca record, but we wanted it to do like that.
Yeah.
And so then we came up with the snare pattern, and then we wanted to use a little 808 cowbell because that was a popular sound. All of these sounds were triggers for the kids who were dancing at our parties.
Right.
So we just wanted to use those things, and we came up with our own creative stuff. And then we just said, we had a song called Fantasy that was going to come out eventually.
Okay.
So we said, we're going to write some new lyrics. I wrote new lyrics for On and On.
Okay.
And Jesse wanted to be able to say Jesse while he was scratching. So we had to write the word Jesse into the song. So so Clap It to the Beat, because Jesse thinks it's neat, was just written so we could have that word Jesse. So that he
on
would
vinyl,
be able to on vinyl so he could scratch it.
Wow.
Same thing with bitch.
Yeah.
The only reason he said bitch was because he liked, you like to be rich, you gotta be a bitch.
White Horse.
Right, from White Horse. He just wanted his voice saying bitch so that he could have it on vinyl and scratch it.
Wow.
So we wrote the song just for that. Same thing, I was writing lyrics for all the songs.
Yeah.
So
who was engineering back then?
Well, we were.
Really?
Yeah, we were.
Wow.
We had a little PA mixer.
Yeah.
And
so balance-wise, you just learned on the go. How to balance
completely on the go.
Wow.
I mean, later on, we were able to start hiring people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, funny thing, on the way to the pressing plant, we go to the pressing plant, which was on 26th Street, way before 932 West 38th Street.
Correct.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
We go to the pressing plant, and Larry Sherman had just acquired Musical Products, was what it was called, from this Mexican guy who was pressing the Hispanic Disneyland records.
Wow.
Like that was his number one contract.
Really?
Was he was pressing the Hispanic Disneyland records.
And they was doing here in Chicago.
Yeah, they were doing them here in Chicago.
Wow.
And then he was doing he had Bel Air Records, which is a big polka label.
Right.
And, so a bunch of one-offs. Yeah. But those were his regular customers. So Larry Sherman had just acquired that record pressing plant. And Larry's intention was that he was going to be the number one seller of 78 RPM records for Wurlitzer jukeboxes.
Wow.
And he said, the records inside the Wurlitzer jukeboxes are really thick.
Yeah,
they're
really heavy.
Super thick. Yeah, super thick piece of vinyl.
Yeah.
And nobody does that anymore.
Right.
But there's all these jukeboxes all over the world, and I'm going to go to every Wurlitzer jukebox collectors meeting and swap meet and stuff like that, and I'm going to sell them at the hop, all these songs from the 50s, because their records wear out eventually, and they're going to need new replacements. And that's what Larry's sole purpose of business was.
Wow.
And we went to say, hey, we want you to press this record. And Larry said, well, we can't master from cassette.
Right.
So we had to go find a studio where we could transfer the cassette to quarter inch. And the studio that we had recorded the Z Factor stuff was back then, strangely enough, the price really hasn't changed. It was like $70 an hour.
All right.
And we couldn't afford to go there and do a transfer.
Right.
And my dad had a friend, his name was Lawrence Hanks.
Okay.
And he and Rodney Massey had a little studio called Fountain.
Okay.
And they also had a group called Omni.
Okay. Oh yeah, Omni.
And they made a record.
Yeah, they did.
they made a record, but and that was an amazing record. So I knew that they could get a good sound and stuff like that. So we took the cassette down to Rodney and said, we need you to transfer this. And then he was trying to, he says, well, look, we can EQ it for you and so on and so forth. We're like, no. The cassette sounds perfect when we play it at the playground. Yeah. Just transfer this to quarter inch.
So you mean to tell me the original record
for On and On
was transferred from a cassette?
From a cassette. Oh, okay. It was made with a 4-track cassette.
Made with a 4-track cassette, right.
It was output to a 2-track cassette.
Right.
And the 2-track cassette was transferred to
quarter-inch tape.
15 IPS.
Right.
Quarter-inch tape.
That you mastered from.
And then we took that back to the pressing plant.
Wow.
And that's what we pressed up. That's what we made the acetates from.
Wow. That's classic right there.
And we took the acetates to the playground.
Yeah.
And played them.
Uh-huh.
And it sounded fucking awesome. And we were so excited.
Yeah.
That we went to the Rink Zone, that we went to Mendo, that we went to Rainbow, everywhere saying, put this acetate on.
Okay.
So and acetates, if you had an acetate back then when you were a DJ,
you were special.
You were special.
You was very special.
So people put that acetate. This ain't even out yet.
Yeah.
Let me put that on.
Right.
And then
you
they put
scratch
it on.
with it. You had to play it right there and slowly put, And so at this time, though, the genre wasn't established and didn't have a name. In your recollection, how did house music get its name then?
Well,
because Jesse didn't say it in On and On, correct?
No.
Okay.
We talked about it in Undercover.
Right, but Undercover was after On and On, right?
Well after.
Yeah.
Well, Hans and Reggie.
Hans Cherry.
And Reggie Corner were the partyingest motherfuckers at the playground.
Right.
And they were hanging up all the posters.
Okay.
And passing out all the flyers.
Right.
They were the champs at that.
Okay.
Okay, they were champs at getting your party going.
Right.
And when they come in and say, after this, we're going to the house.
Right. Which was the warehouse.
Okay. I can see how that got dumbed down.
Okay.
Because saying I'm going to the warehouse.
Yeah.
They just said, fuck it, I'm going to call it the house. I'm going to the house.
Okay.
And
as we always do, because we make up our own slang.
And people used to say that, oh, that's that warehouse music.
Yeah.
And that got dumbed down.
Right.
So, because it wouldn't fit on the top thing of the vinyl separator at imports.
Right.
That warehouse music wouldn't fit on there.
So they just had house music.
So I'm
just want to make sure.
I heard a Leonard Roy playing We Play House music.
And I'm not going there, but I'm going back to, your guy Wayne Williams. He stated that house music came from people playing music in their homes, in their basements.
Well, when they were playing doo-wop music in their basement, and I was about to break a girl's back at 14, 15 years old, bending her over on a slow dance, right?
Right.
We didn't call that house music.
Okay. It was doo-wop. Okay.
We didn't call...
I'm just making sure. I just wanted to clear it up because there's so many definitions.
We didn't call all that funk stuff that Dr. Funkenstein that was playing. I was charging $1 or 50 cents to get in the basement.
Right.
We were playing Flashlight.
Right.
We didn't call that house music.
Okay. I'm just making sure, man.
No, I'm just saying that the logic tells me.
Absolutely. So since we're here already, we might as well address that. What makes house?
I think that house music is the bleeding heart of every free-spirited dancer. House music doesn't know what race you are.
Right.
It doesn't know what neighborhood you came from.
Right.
House music is the heart of independence. It's the heart
Mm.
of love and togetherness. When people come together around house music, everything else
Right.
doesn't matter except for that moment where everybody's dancing or playing the records
Right.
or doing the lights
Yeah.
or serving the pop
Yeah.
or whatever makes that party magical.
Yeah.
The center of all of that, that's house music.
That's good.
And the
I like
music
that.
may change,
Yeah.
you know,
And the
style.
people. Yeah. And the people.
And the people might
Yeah.
change, you know, but really it's that let's all get together and be on
Yeah.
the same beat,
Yeah.
you know, on our own.
Right.
That's what house music is.
That's nice. I like that. And I want to stay here for a little bit because since I say you are one of the founders of house music because you was there from the conception and from day one. Who created house music, Vince?
What do you mean by who created house music? What do you mean by that?
Because I get this a lot and I see it a lot in a lot of documentaries. It was a whole bunch of people who created them out. It's black, white, gay, straight.
Okay,
And
so
I want to know from your mouth who created house music, Chicago house music.
okay, so this is what I think. I think that there are a few creators, not a lot,
Right.
but a few.
Okay.
And I think that everybody has their role to play.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you have to give credit to Farley Jackmaster Funk
Okay.
because he got the stuff out so that the whole city could see what us kids were doing over here in this corner
Right.
every Friday and Saturday night at the playground or Sawyer's, etc.
Right.
You know, those were secret parties.
Yes.
You know, you had to be a teenager from a specific neighborhood to know that, like, hey, Saturday night at 8 o'clock in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
you know, in an abandoned sail making factory
Right.
was going to be a party. It ain't gonna be no thugs there. Ain't nobody worried about getting robbed or nothing like that. It was all good if you came to
Right.
this address
Right.
on this day at that time.
Right.
If you came the next day or the next weekend, you missed it.
Yeah.
So Farley got our music out to the whole city.
Right.
So I think that, you know, he helped create house music in that sense. Jesse Saunders helped me understand the mechanics of what's going to make people dance on the floor.
Right.
You know,
So it's Farley, it's Jesse, it's yourself.
I would say myself, you know, the reason I would say I was involved in the creation of this
Right.
at all is because nobody was thinking about making records.
Right.
Like everybody was DJing or throwing parties or
Yeah.
promoting other people's parties and stuff like that. And we were our community was perfectly fine dancing to other people's beats.
Right.
I think that turning point for us was when one of us said to another one of us that we can make our own records,
Yeah.
not just play other people's records
Right.
or listen to other people's records, that we could have our voices,
Right.
our teenage, non-musical
Yeah.
voices
Yeah.
on our own songs, that we were singing about stuff that was going on in our own little parties,
Yeah.
using keywords like undercover
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Jack, everything like that.
Jack
Right.
and all of that came because, hey, we could say what we want to say and it'll be on a record. And I came to that understanding because I watched Captain Sky
Right.
go
Right.
from the garage
Right.
to a Soul Train.
Yeah.
I watched all of these records Eddie Thomas was putting out
Yeah.
I remember the 5 stair steps. I remember when the one guy moved to New York,
Yeah.
and he came out with another disco record
Yeah.
called All Night Thing.
Right.
You know, so if Eddie and my father hadn't taught me,
right,
that I didn't have to be on the receiving end of records, that I could be on the creating end, just like Captain Sky, just like Curtis Mayfield,
right,
just like Gene Chandler, who I had met. If I didn't know from looking directly at them and seeing the process, you know, in the studios and so on and so forth, that result would be I would be the guy on stage singing my song.
Yeah.
Would there be house music?
Right.
That's a question for everybody. Would there be house music if
I think
our
your father,
DJs, if our DJs just kept playing records,
right,
and the record business as it existed in Chicago, kept doing what they were doing, because Yvonne Gage put out a record, and you know Granny White put out 3 or 4 or 5. The Amusement Park Band came out, and so on and so forth. Would there be a house music if the fringe of the record business hadn't inspired that little 14-year-old kid to go, wait a minute, hold on, you don't have to just listen to the music at just on your stereo at home. You can actually participate in making it, and so can all of your friends.
Absolutely. And that's why I say, and that's why I do this, so people can understand, because sometimes you get left out of a lot of things, Vince. And I think it's time for you, you know, to shine and make sure that people know who you are and understand that you had integral part in this. You know, from everybody, from Jesse, from Farley, you know, Chippy, you know, you laid the foundation and you was there on every step of the way. And people don't say your name as much, but it has to be known that you was there from day one, brother. And I just want to, I'm giving you flowers now, man.
Thank you, sir. My mom raised me pretty much by herself. And I didn't come from a fancy neighborhood, and I wasn't one of the wealthy kids or one of the popular kids or any of that. I struggled in. And the only thing I wanted to do was play with my friends.
Right.
And honestly, I'm born in January.
Right.
So that's right after Christmas.
Right.
My birthday wasn't really celebrated like everybody else's because you spent all the money on Christmas and, you know, that was that. I just really wanted to play with my friends.
Yeah.
So I learned to share very early on in my life. And that's what this was for me. It was an opportunity for me to say, hey, Jesse, you can make you can make your own record. Yeah. Like, fuck, you're playing everybody else's record, but you can make yours.
That's good, man.
And, you know, we found out that Dwayne, who was selling pop on the other side of the playground, that he played keyboards. Right. And we got him involved. And when Farley said he wanted us to make a record help him make a record, great. Let's help him make a record too. Yeah. I wrote a song about girls who wouldn't date me. Right. It's pretty funny. It's really some teenager puberty shit. Like, okay, these girls ain't giving me no attention. Yeah. Now this is how it started. Right. My dreams all broken hearted because I want you.
Wow. That's love can't turn around.
It's really the story of
you,
a boy who really couldn't get girls. Yeah.
And that's crazy because you know what? At that time, all you guys worked together. as a unit, man, that made some great records, man, and that made history.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to this day right now to probably try to do that and just refurbish that, because it seemed like it's hard to get everybody together to do something for a greater cause.
We have an opportunity to do that now. We're celebrating now, it's been 40 years since we made On and On.
Yeah.
And we're celebrating that. We have an opportunity to simply acknowledge that we've been here hitting 40 years.
Correct.
And, I'm always willing to put whatever differences there are to the side.
Yeah.
So that we can elevate us as a whole. Yeah. It's not about elevating me or my man over here or our little clique over here.
Yeah.
But really, it's about elevating us as a culture. And I think that we have to take steps that are bigger than just us as individuals in order to ensure that we have a legacy.
Yeah.
Because, man, I had a conversation with somebody in Chicago who's been here 9 or 10 years.
Right.
And I swear this guy on the north side was ready to fight because I was trying to tell him that house music didn't come from Amsterdam.
Right. And see, and this is why I do the show, so people can understand, because you hear it from the horse's mouth, the people that was here, the pioneers, the founders, and people, later on, DJs, dancers, promoters, because like you said, it's not one person that created this.
No, there's so many people.
Yeah.
Marshall was very important,
Yeah.
And he laid it all on the line. He quit his job at the post office so he could try to do this.
Yeah.
And there's Wayne Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Who taught Jesse how to DJ.
Yeah.
So if Wayne didn't teach Jesse how to DJ, and Jesse
it would never happen, right?
Jesse and I wouldn't have met at the playground. And
now let me ask you: were you member of Jesse's gang?
Okay, so I wrote Real Love.
Really?
Looking through a fog inside my mind, oh, is it real? Wanting to be near you all the time. Again, another story about a guy who wasn't getting a girl.
Yeah. Wow.
I wrote Real Love. And then later on, we had a song called Funk You Up.
Right.
I wrote that about Dwayne's girl problems. When those ladies changed from
Dwayne
nice
his
to bad,
last name so people
Dwayne
know.
Buford.
There you go.
About his girl problems, I wrote Funk You Up about that. I was the lyric writer.
Okay.
I was not a member of Jesse's gang because at the time, Jesse was trying to center on his musicians that could play their instruments. And I wasn't a keyboard player.
Right.
I was more like an engineer or a technician.
Right.
So while, I don't know, what was I? I guess I was the fifth Beatle in Jesse's gang.
Right. Wow.
Writing all their lyrics.
Yeah.
Every word that came out of Jesse's mouth, per se.
Right.
And helping them sound good.
Yeah.
But not really in the band.
Okay. But you were the first one to get a signed to a major record label, correct?
Yes.
In the form of house.
I had started
house genre.
I had started making a more experimental form of our music.
Okay.
And I
and that was under Bang Orchestra.
Yes.
Okay.
I was really a big fan of this guy Trevor Horn.
Okay.
Because Trevor had made some of the records that really moved me on the dance floor. He did Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Slave to the Rhythm by Grace Jones. And then he did The Art of Noise, Beatbox and Close to the Edit.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, that's
what you wanted to do.
That's the future of, where this dance music thing can go.
So that's what I want to touch on, because I'm like, do you feel that you abandoned the music you originated from when you got this deal?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think I stuck to the music I started making at the beginning.
Okay.
If you listen to the Z Factor album, it was going in that direction. It was not just, this is a whole conversation we were having about, no, I don't feel that I abandoned what I was doing. I feel that our community abandoned where we came from because we were built on more than just soulful disco records.
Right.
We were built on new wave records. We were built on experimental records like Kraftwerk. We were built on the Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I mean, Jesse was playing beatbox at friggin' the playground.
But don't you think that you could have eased into it instead of just straight changing it from?
I didn't straight change. It was no different than another day at the office. We had just made Lanois Wanna Dance before that. We had just made Come to Me by Gwendolyn before that.
Right.
Dum Dum before that. This was all parts of it. I think that guys who say, okay, we're going to make this stuff that sounds like this Philly stuff or the stuff that sounds like these guys from New York and stuff like that. I think that they said, you know, where does, you know, First Choice is a New York record.
Right.
Time to Jack is a Chicago record.
Correct.
And you look at it, it's very experimental.
Right.
In its sound. It's all synth driven.
Yeah.
And Time to Jack has more in common with Bang Orchestra than it does with Lolita Holloway.
Oh, absolutely.
And not just Time to Jack, Work That Motherfucker.
Right.
You know, so many records. I've Lost Control.
Yeah.
No Way Back by Adonis.
Absolutely.
All of these records are experimental dance music.
Right. But they're made by you guys, the teens that created it, because you wanted something different. It wasn't like you wanted something that was yours, correct?
Yes. We were trying to make our sound for the party.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Honestly, we didn't care about anything else other than what's going to rock that party.
There you go.
Okay, so we got this beat coming out like this.
There you go.
We got this bass sound coming out like that.
Right.
And we got somebody saying this, that on top of it.
Because you was in the clubs every week and you knew what the kids wanted.
And really, honestly, it was a whole lot less musical.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Than what people are calling house music per se today.
Yeah.
I think that so I didn't lose my way.
Right.
I think that other people lost their way. Started saying like, look, you need to make this stuff sound more like this black music over there or that black music over here. Oh. I think that that's the case more so than Vince, you did something different. Now imagine the possibility if we would have continued to support our experimentation.
Right.
Would Chicago own what became EDM? Would these black Chicagoans own have a greater seat, have a bigger seat at the table with this $3 billion industry? Yeah. Now we're on the outside looking in at stuff that we were making in the very early 80s.
Right.
That we were, that's our
but do you think
that's our throwaway?
I don't think that's our fault. I think it's our fault to the point of business, better knowing the business. I think it's our fault not having, in some cases, choosing to copy some other shit that was winning for other people instead of supporting our own ingenuity and innovation. But I think majority we did do that.
At first,
yeah.
Which is why Fast Cars was being played at the playground.
Yeah.
Which was why, you see what I'm saying?
No, I get you.
Which is why weird stuff like I've Lost Control, or No Way Back, and all of these records were getting played and supported, and given the opportunity to hear the meet ears and bodies of these crowds.
Yeah. Did you do it with No Way Back? Were you doing anything with that with Adonis?
The thing is, I started Trax Records.
Okay.
And we tried to sign anything that we thought would move the speakers.
Right.
So we tried. I was really instrumental in creating a place where a circumstance by which a guy like Adonis, who may or may not have been able to press his records on his own,
right,
could get his records out.
Yeah.
Same thing for Jesse Velez. We brought him to the label. Marshall.
Yeah.
I brought Dez to the label.
Right.
And that's actually ended up being the first record that Byron sang on, that first actual record that came out that Byron sang on, and so on and so forth. I thought that it was important that if someone had a position at the party,
right,
that they should get a record out.
Yeah.
And even to this day, a couple of weeks ago, I went and spoke to Dave Risquet.
Okay.
Who was so important to our parties, man. If Dave Risquet came to your party and he was dancing on top of the speaker, that was part of the ambience. Your party was more of a hit, because he was there,
right,
dancing on the speakers or whatever he was doing, than anything. And I noticed that nobody had ever made a record with Dave Risquet.
Okay.
So I went and made a record with Dave Risquet just so that, we could have a sound to associate with that silhouette.
Yeah. Yeah.
In our party.
Yeah.
And then, it's same time, Robert Williams.
Right.
He founded the Warehouse. He founded the Music Box. Very important part.
Yeah.
But there was no audio record per se.
Yeah.
I say record.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, Robert Williams was here.
Right.
And this is his sound.
Yeah.
So I helped Robert make a record as well, because I thought that, as these guys get up in age, that it's important that we celebrate them by dancing to their story. Yeah. My story was the guy who couldn't get a girl.
Right. You read it down already. So let me ask you this, Vince. You being there from the conception of Trax Records, your father label, Mitch Ball Records.
Mm-hmm. There's others too. There's so many labels.
Do you feel a little accountable for not educating everybody that was coming up after you, because of on a business side of it? Like you really need to know about publishing, writers, shares, everything, like especially from everybody that was on Trax Records.
This is how I feel about that, honestly. I didn't know what I needed, what I should have known.
Okay.
I had no guidance.
Right.
And the older people that were in the music business, that had experienced success, received the royalty checks, got the publishing, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
They weren't telling us what to do.
Gotcha.
Or if they were, it was on the backside of, hey, I'll show you something if you give me a piece of what you got going on.
Right.
And we fought tooth and nail to get the popularity and to get the records positioned. Like, we fought tooth and nail for time in those DJ booths at the Taste Entertainment Center, where, John Hall Jr. was trying to get Whitney Houston played, and we were trying to get Hudson to play our new jam that just came out.
Yeah.
And these guys weren't telling us, hey, man, if you do this, this, and this, that's going to make your record something that the labels in New York, I can send back to New York and get you this kind of deal. And when we were about to get deals, they weren't telling us the best way to protect our masters or ourselves or anything. Yeah. They were like, oh, these fucking kids done went and got signed. I want to get you know, the band that I was managing
Right.
per se.
So you were just basically just saying like you was blind in this too as well as everybody else.
I learned as I learned as I went,
Yeah.
and I did the best I could. You know, and at some point you start thinking that because this is what's happening,
Right.
and you hear these stories of this is what's happened in the past,
Yeah.
you just think that that's how it is. You think that you got to sign your masters away.
Right.
You think that you got to give somebody all your publishing, and you think that, you know, you don't know the other side of it, of the James Brown who said, of the Sam Cooke who said, I'm gonna publish myself.
Yeah.
You know, nobody told us the story of Brunswick Records and how or VJ and how these black people own their stuff.
Right.
And the importance of that and what that looked like 20 years down the road or 5 years down the road even. Because perhaps we would have made different decisions.
Yeah. No, I feel you, man. That's good. But let's touch on this a little bit. I don't know if you talk about it. There's a lawsuit you superheaded to redistribute ownership of Trax Records catalog and name. Can you speak on that just a little bit?
Okay, so I started this record label.
Trax Records.
Yeah, I started Trax Records. I'll start to answer. I started Trax Records to solve a problem that Jesse Dwayne and I were having with our business of making songs and putting them out and selling them.
Right.
And the problem that we were having was we would order a bunch of records and a large percentage of them went to the one-stops and distributorships on consignment.
Right.
And we had to wait until they sold those records to collect money for those.
Yeah.
And once we collected that money, then we could go press up another record.
Right.
I had gotten a job at the record pressing plant.
Right.
And that was putting some money in my pocket. And I was doing something I like to do.
Right.
And our idea was, hey, Larry, if you press up these records and front them,
right,
we're going to go out and sell them.
Right.
And then you're going to make more money, Larry, than you would have made if we just paid you for the records in the first place.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're going to make more money.
Right.
Because we're going to get the records at a slightly lower price.
Right.
And we're going to be able to sell more of them. That was the plan. And Larry said, well, how am I going to be able to tell the difference between a record that's on Precision, because we had sold records to his label that he made up, Precision Records, and the records that are on Jesse.
Right.
And I was so enamored with what was happening, the popularity of a lot of these new wave and industrial records that were coming out on Wax Tracks records. And I was recording at this new place called Chicago Tracks Recording.
Right.
I said, we're going to name this label Tracks.
Right.
And I had done this slightly angular approach to the label positioning with my dad's label, Mitch Ball. So I said, we're going to tilt it to the side like this. And I had noticed that all of the DJs were now playing white labels, records that weren't out yet and stuff like that. And it was mostly written on, you know, the name of the record is kind of scribbled on with a ballpoint pen per se. And I said, man, if you're looking for a jam and you're trying to go through all the white labels to find the exact same one, you will often miss your cue point looking for the next record. But if I make my records black label instead of white label, and I put tracks in big block letters,
Right.
you can see that shit in the dark. And if you can't find that one you were looking for,
Right.
you know you can just grab one of them tracks
Right.
and put that on, and you'll be good
yeah.
until you find the next one.
Right.
And that's how the label got. That was the principle behind the label design.
Right.
And that was the reason why we named that label. But anyway, so I kind of brought all my friends in and said, hey, you can make a record, you can get a record out, so on and so forth. And with that, we built a powerhouse,
Yeah.
you know, and credit to Larry for saying, hey, you know what the fuck, I'm going to try it
Right.
with these kids. But everybody didn't get their fair shake on that.
Correct.
And, you know, he really made a bunch of promises verbally and in writing
Right.
that weren't honored. And looking back at the situation, everybody should have what belongs to them per the agreements that were made.
Correct.
And if he wasn't honoring his agreement, then there is no agreement.
Right.
And I wanted to get my affairs in order. As I get older in age, my wife said, you know, how is anybody going to even make heads or tails of any of this? What's your son going to inherit?
Right.
And I said, I'm going to do that. And I went to him and said, hey, you know what? I started the label. I did all these records.
Right.
There were no agreements. I'm just going to give me my masters back and stop selling my stuff.
Right.
And a lawyer that represented them at the time said, I see that we have no contract, but we're going to exercise these rights until a court tells us otherwise.
Right.
Those were the words he
said to you.
He said to me.
Yeah.
And I said, let me understand this. You know that you don't have these rights, but you're going to keep selling my stuff until I sue you.
Right.
And he said, well, there's an alternative. You can sign over 50% of it, and then you'll have 50% of it.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to have to go to court, and that can be expensive and so on and so forth. And I said, you know what? My son's going to inherit what belongs to him.
Yeah.
And I don't care how much it costs or how long it takes. That was that. And then I realized that I've been really blessed and fortunate. I've had a tremendous amount of success in all of my entrepreneurial activities in and outside of the record business.
Right.
And that there's so many people that were stuck in a situation where if they challenged these people that were exploiting their stuff, that they really couldn't financially afford to do that. And they were giving up on fighting before they even start.
Right.
And I went to my attorney and I said, look, this is all I got. But this isn't right.
Yeah.
And just because people can't afford to demand what belongs to them,
right,
they shouldn't just get fucked.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm thankful for Sean, for the fact that I have this relationship with Sean Moroney, who's an entrepreneur himself, and an attorney.
Yeah.
That he said, look, this isn't right. You're right, Vince. This isn't right.
Yeah.
We should gather everybody together who can't afford to exercise what are their rights.
Correct.
And call these people on the carpet for what they've been doing.
Right.
And with that, we sued them. And it started with like 15 people.
Yeah.
And now it's like 35 people.
Right.
Who feel that they've been mistreated by this label.
Absolutely.
And we're going to have our day in court where we discover what's what, who owns what, who got paid for what, etc., so that people can have a chance at controlling that part of their own destiny.
Yeah. There you go, brother. Hey, man, Vince, it's about that time is up, man. So I just want to say thank you so much, man, for doing this. I appreciate your time and telling your truth about it, man, and telling your truth about everything that went on from the conception of house music to now, brother. I appreciate it. I love you. I appreciate that, man.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for acknowledging me. I really
come on now,
that.
brother. I if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, man. You have to pay homage to the past and not just eliminate you guys, because if it wasn't for you guys, a lot of people wouldn't be doing this, man. And nobody can say that. I mean, from everybody from let's go from Felix the House Cat to David Guetta to anybody. If it wasn't for you guys, they wouldn't be here either. So that's a landmark of like where people came from or where they are right now. And I just want to pay the homage to everybody that created that, man. I have to give them their flowers while they're alive, because you guys deserve that. If you couldn't get the fame and fortune like you're supposed to because of Larry Sherman or whatever, or the accolades, or even the financial status of where y'all supposed to be at right now, at least I can do this to let everybody know in the world that this was happening. And you guys are a big part of this, of what house music is today, / EDM, whatever you have, that makes a ton of money to this day, that your feet is grounded, that you are the purpose of why this is happening, brother.
Thank you for acknowledging. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak, and hopefully someone learns something from this.
Yes, sir.
And is able to apply the willingness to chase a dream to their dream.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Once again, brother, thank you so much. And y'all, thank you for watching Everything House Music More. Peace out.
All right.